She sat slumped on her couch, phone pressed against her ear, heart hammering in her chest. Weeks of silence had stretched into an unbearable void, and Annie Murphy could only assume the worst. The audition for Schitt's Creek had gone well. Great, even, but Hollywood had taught her not to mistake silence for success. Rejection didn't come with fireworks or fanfare. It came with stillness, the kind of stillness that haunted your voicemail and made your inbox look like a graveyard. Dan Levy's name flashed across her phone, and her breath caught. She answered, voice trembling, trying to sound casual and failing miserably. Hey, Dan, she whispered. There was a pause, a long one. Then his familiar voice came through. Hey, Annie, how are you? That did it. Her resolve crumbled. Please, she blurted, desperate, just put me out of my misery. Dan laughed, a real, warm laugh. You got it, he said. You're Alexis. Tears welled in her eyes as the words washed over her. She was Alexis, the role that would change everything for her. The part she had poured herself into, heart first, had finally found a home, and that home was hers. But the road to that moment hadn't been smooth. Far from it. Annie had nearly walked away from acting altogether. Years of struggling auditions, of near misses and minor roles, had chipped away at her confidence. There was a time, not long before Schitt's Creek, when she had less than $200 in her bank account. Her apartment felt more like a borrowed corner of someone else's life than her own. She even been prepared to move back in with her parents in Ottawa. She clung to the few things that brought her joy: her dog, her journals, her rare victories in tiny theater productions. She told herself it was all for something, but sometimes that something felt like a fantasy too far out of reach. Then came the Schitt's Creek audition. The moment she read the script, she felt a spark. Alexis Rose was unlike any character she'd played. There was something magnetic in her oblivious self-importance, her unapologetic wealth of previously on adventures, and her surprising depth. Alexis might come off as vapid, but Annie sensed the soul beneath the sunglasses. She poured herself into the character, down to the tiniest toss of her hair and the perfectly timed Valley Girl inflections. You, David, wasn't just a line. It was a lifestyle. She wanted this role. No, she needed it. The audition, she thought, had gone well. But then days passed. Then weeks. Hollywood's cruel clock ticked on. Dan Levy, co-creator and eventual Emmy-winning showrunner, had also been on edge. Finding Alexis wasn't easy. The show was personal to him. Deeply so. It was based on his vision, and it revolved around a family whose dysfunctions were undercut by their humanity. He knew the character had to be funny, yes, but she also had to be lovable in spite of her privilege, and capable of real change. Annie's tape had lingered with him. Her comedic timing was undeniable, and beneath the surface, she brought something new, a vulnerability that couldn't be taught. Still, the decision took time. They had to be sure. When he finally called her, hearing her plea, "Put me out of my misery," he knew he'd made the right choice. That line, unscripted and raw, was pure Annie. Once cast, Annie threw herself into the role with abandon. She built Alexis from the ground up, injecting her with absurdities and mannerisms that became iconic. The flailing hands, the breathy tone, the wandering eyes when recounting yet another wild story from her past. But she also layered the character with warmth and strength, especially as Alexis evolved from a pampered heiress into an independent, self-sufficient woman. Viewers fell in love, not just with the show, but with her. The lines blurred between Alexis and Annie. One had been born into luxury. The other had clawed her way into the spotlight with nothing but grit and talent. But they both grew, on screen and off. The role changed her life. Awards, red carpets, recognition, it all followed. But more than that, Schitt's Creek gave Annie something deeper. Proof that persistence pays off, that talent finds its audience, and that sometimes a single phone call really can change everything. Looking back, she laughs about it now. That moment on the couch, the desperation in her voice, the sheer panic of not knowing. But that's the magic of her story. For all the poise she brought to the character, And all the polish of post-fame interviews, it started in the most unglamorous way imaginable. A broke actress begging for an answer. "Please put me out of my misery," she'd said. And just like that, her misery was over. Her next chapter had begun.